Good day, everyone. Today, I will be talking about Jeremy Bentham, one of the most influential thinkers in ethics. His ideas help show how we make decisions based on fairness, happiness, and reducing harm. You may not have heard of his name before, but his philosophy still influences our laws in everyday life today. So, in this presentation, I will first give a brief background on who Jeremy Bentham was, and then explain his main thoughts on ethics, including his famous idea called utilitarianism. So, who was Jeremy Bentham? Jeremy Bentham was born in 1748 in England. He was a very intelligent child, and he started reading serious books at just 3 years old. By the time he was 12, he was already in college, and instead of becoming a lawyer his father wanted, he became deeply interested in philosophy, especially in the question, what makes an action right or wrong? He spent his life thinking about this question and came up with a new idea called utilitarianism, which became the foundation of modern ethics and law. Bentham wasn't just a thinker, he also wanted to make the world a better place. He believed that laws and decisions should be based on happiness, fairness, and reduced suffering. So, Bentham's biggest contribution to ethics was a theory called utilitarianism, and it is based on a simple idea, which is the best action is the one that creates the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. This is also called the principle of utility, which means that we should always choose actions that bring the most benefit and the least harm. So, for example, imagine you have one chocolate bar, and there are two options for you to take. Option number one would be you eat it all yourself, and that would mean that only you are the one who's happy. But for option number two, when you share it with your four friends, more people are going to be happy. So, according to Bentham, option two is the best offer for a better choice because it creates a more happiness overall. Bentham realized that different actions bring different levels of happiness, so he created a way to measure pleasure and pain. It is called the hedonistic calculus. So, when we're deciding whether something is good or bad, he suggested we think about these questions, which is intensity, duration, certainty, and extent. So, the questions for intensity are how strong is the happiness or pain? And for the duration, how long would this last? And for certainty, how sure are we that it will happen? And for the extent, how many people are affected? So let's take an example. Should we build a park in a neighborhood? There are also two options. If we build the park, many people will, of course, enjoy it for many, many years. And that will mean that we're going to get more happiness. And option number two is if we don't, there's less joy and people might be unhappy, which means that there's less happiness. By using Bentham's method, we can make decisions based on which option creates more happiness and less suffering. So let us move on. Why is Bentham's idea is very important? So Bentham's ethical theory wasn't just about making small, everyday choices like sharing a candy or deciding what to eat. He believed that his philosophy should be used to change laws, improve society, and make the world a better place. His ideas had a huge impact on many areas, including the government, human rights, prison systems, and even how we treat animals. Number one is laws and government. So Bentham believed that governments should not just serve the interests of the rich and powerful. They should create laws that help the greatest number of people. So before Bentham's time, many laws were unfair and benefited only the upper class. Poor people had little protection and punishments for crimes, and they were often extremely harsh. Bentham argued that laws should be designed to increase happiness and reduce suffering for all the citizens. So, example for that is he supported democracy. So, where people have a say in how they are governed. And he also believed government policies should focus on public good, such as things education, healthcare, and fair wages. And he was also against outdated cruel punishments that didn't actually benefit society. So, for example, before Bentham, small crimes such as stealing food could lead to death or severe punishments. But after Bentham's idea, it spread. So the laws changed to focus on fairer punishments that fit to the crime. So Bentham's belief in happiness for the majority shaped modern government systems, including public services, social welfare, and equal rights laws. Number two is human rights. So Bentham was one of the first philosophers to argue that all people should be treated equally, no matter what their background is, their wealth, or social status. He opposed systems where only the rich or noble classes had rights, and he believed that everyone's happiness is equally important whether you're rich or poor, male, female, or from a different country. He also supported freedom of speech and individual rights as long as they didn't harm others, and he also thought laws should protect all people, not just those in power. So his ideas laid the foundation for modern human rights laws. And today, organizations such as your United Nations and they follow similar principles when promoting equality and protecting vulnerable groups. For the third one would be your prison reform. So Bentham was also a big advocate for prison reforms. In his time, criminals were often treated cruelly, and regardless of how serious their crimes were, many were locked up in terrible conditions or given harsh punishments like whipping or execution. So, even for small crimes, they were given very harsh punishments. So, Bentham believed that the goal of punishment should not just be revenge, but also to help criminals improve so that they can return to society as better people. So he argued for number one, fairer punishments that fit the crime, number two, better prison conditions, and cleaner facilities and humane treatment. Lastly, education and work programs in prisons to help criminals learn new skills instead of just suffering behind bars. So he even designed a new type of prison called the panopticon. So it was meant to allow guards to watch prisoners without the prisoners knowing exactly when they were being watched. The idea was that this would encourage prisoners to behave better without needing cruel punishments. So, example, before Bentham, a person caught stealing could be whipped or executed. But after Bentham's idea was spread, jails introduced fairer sentencing and rehabilitation programs to help prisoners change. So his ideas helped shape modern criminal justice systems, where many countries now focus on rehabilitation, education, and reintegration rather than just punishment. Fourth, animal rights. Bentham was also one of the first philosophers to argue that animals deserve moral consideration. And at that time, many people believed that animals were not important because they could think like humans. But Bentham argued that the real question was the question is not can they reason, nor can they talk, but can they suffer? Since animals feel pain and pleasure, they should be treated with kindness and protected from unnecessary suffering. So Bentham's ideas led to the creation of animal rights laws, including banning animal cruelty, which was many laws today prevent people from harming animals. Second is better treatment for farm animals, which is more ethical farming practices have been introduced. Third is animal welfare organizations. Groups like PETA and the World Animal Protection follow Bentham's ideas in following fighting for animals' rights. So what is Bentham's legacy? How do we use his ideas today? So even though that Bentham lived over 200 years ago, his ideas still shape our modern world. Let's take a look at some examples of where we can see utilitarianism in action today. So, number one an example here is healthcare. So, in hospitals, doctors must make difficult decisions about who to treat first. They often follow Bentham's principle by number one, prioritizing the sickest patients. It is to reduce the most suffering. Number two is using resources efficiently. So, for example, in a pandemic, vaccines are given to the most at risk first. So, this follows the utilitarian rule of maximizing happiness and reducing suffering for the greatest number of people. Number two is government policies. So, the governments today make laws based on what benefits of the majority of the people. And some examples include number one is free public education. This allows more people to learn, leading to a better society overall. Number two is traffic laws. speed limits exist to prevent accidents and protect lives. And lastly is public healthcare programs. Many governments provide free or low-cost healthcare to ensure people stay healthy, and these policies aim to increase happiness for as many people as possible, just as Bentham suggested. Third is ethical business. Bentham's idea also influenced how businesses operate. Companies today don't just focus on making money, they also think about the well being of their workers, customers, and the environment. Examples of ethical businesses practices inspired by Bentham is number one, fair wages. Companies pay workers properly so they can have a good quality of life. Number two is sustainable practices. Businesses uses eco-friendly methods to protect the environment. Lastly is consumer safety. Companies make sure their products are safe and don't harm people. So, by considering the happiness of the customers, employees, and society, ethical businesses follow Bentham's idea of maximizing happiness and reducing harm. So, while Bentham's ideas were groundbreaking, some philosophers thought this theory needed improvement. So there is John Stuart Mill, which is one of Bentham's followers, agreed with utilitarianism but argued that not all pleasures are equal. He believed that mental and intellectual pleasures, such as learning and helping others, were better than simple pleasures, such as eating sweets. So, for example, studying for a test might not be fun at the moment, but it helps in the long run. Or eating a pizza is fun, but the happiness is short lived. So Mill improved Bentham's ideas by emphasizing quality over quantity when measuring happiness. So to sum things up, Jeremy Bentham was a philosopher who believed that right actions create the most happiness for the most people, and we should measure happiness and pain when making decisions. Laws and rules should be made for the good of society and not just the individuals. So his ideas influenced many aspects of human rights, government, and ethics, and they are still relevant today. So the next time you make a decision, ask yourself, will this decision bring more happiness to more people? And if yes, then Bentham would say you made the right choice. Thank you for listening.